Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Underneath the Iceberg. I'm your host, Sean Denon. Join me as we dive deep into the untold stories of success. Through candid interviews, we're going to reveal pivotal moments and defining experiences that propelled these ordinary individuals to their level of greatness. Let's go. Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Underneath the Iceberg. I'm super excited about today's guest, Jose Bolanos. If I'm saying that right, perfect. Jose is someone who, and Jose, I'll tell you a little bit about himself when we get into it, but I've always enjoyed Jose's content. Jose's a great content creator online. Jose's a great motivational person, coach, speaker, and I've always enjoyed your content. So I just reached out. This is our first time meeting each other, actually, but I just reached out and knew that he was someone that I definitely wanted to have on the show. So, Jose, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for reaffirming my content.
Yes.
You say it that way. Thank you so much for that. So yeah.
Well, sometimes we do it and don't realize the impact that it's. I'm not the best at always smashing that like button, right? But and I tell that, and actually, that's a little side thing is I tell that to people about content creation all the time. Just because you're not getting the likes or the comments or something doesn't mean people aren't consuming, doesn't mean people aren't loving it, doesn't mean people aren't eating up your content, right? So little side view, keep creating.
And it's also good to get a sense of how people are perceiving it, right? Like how is maybe asking for feedback and letting people tell you how they're perceiving you, especially people that don't know you.
Absolutely.
Reaching out and absolutely. At some point asking how that's coming through. So I'm pretty excited that's the way it's being perceived. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. Yeah. So as we always do, we're gonna start early. So Jose, if you can start us from the beginning, tell us a little bit about childhood, where you came from, hopes and dreams, all that kind of stuff. Get us started.
All right. That's exciting to me, by the way, to start there and to have that opportunity to be able to speak into that. Childhood. I am born in Nicaragua, 1981, post-Civil War here in the country. So we were born in being a father today, I can't imagine what my parents were going through in that moment here in the country. Two siblings, older siblings, we're four, but I have my sister and my brother, then me, then my younger sister. So we're born in Nicaragua, post-Civil War, into a communist government, that was aligned with Russia and the whole communist bloc, Cuba. But my family, I mentioned this because my family was an oppositional family. We were opposed to the government, which is very important. If I move you forward in time, my grandfather's brother was president of Nicaragua. In 2001, 2002, he became president, but he was always an oppositional leader since back in the 80s, which actually didn't make it easy for us. So we had to leave the country in 1986. We left and we went to live to Missouri. So I lived in St. Louis, Missouri. All right. My grandma is actually from St. Louis.
Okay.
So my grandma is Irish American, Patricia Davis, where my grandfather went to study in St. Louis University. He met my grandma. They got married. So I have roots both in Nicaragua and in St. Louis, Missouri.
Excellent.
So we went to live there for 5 years until there was a turning of the government here in Nicaragua. So we had another government take over, and my father and my mother decided to come back to the country.
And when did that happen, Jose? How long did you spend in St. Louis?
5 years. It was 5 years. So in 1991.
You were about 5 years old when you moved there, and then you spent about 5 years in St. Louis?
Yeah. So I was about 5 years old when we moved to St. Louis, 5 years there, came back. But I always felt Nicaragua as home. I felt that I wasn't home when I was in St. Louis. Gotcha. So when I came back, Nicaragua is a very enchanting country. There's a lot of freedom, even though it's not political, but there's a lot of freedom to go outside, to go in the mountains, to go in the ocean. There's oceans, there are lakes, there's volcanoes. And I was always a nature. I always loved nature. I was always gathering bugs, and I was kind of nerdy around that. So Nicaragua just felt like an amazing place. When I was here, I completely loved it, and I still do. I still love being able to live in Nicaragua, even though my business is from the U.S. So most of my clients are U.S. based, but I'm living in Nicaragua, so it's an incredible privilege to be able to do that. And we'll get into that, how I design my lifestyle. But came back, studied in an American school, the American school here in Nicaragua. It's like a U.S. curriculum, U.S. accredited school. All your teachers are American. So we were still very Americanized. And so grew up. My parents got divorced when I was around 12. They separated. It was pretty shocking. And I took to so I was pretty bohemian and philosophical. I would write poetry. I would read since I was really young. A lot of books around The Catcher in the Rye, 1984, Lord of the Flies, Picture of Dorian Gray. I was always reading. I read books on communism. I actually read books on Marxism and political. I actually studied politics. I'm a political science major. But I was
What,
always
what
leading.
drove that? What drove that? Was it just an interest? Was it because of the opposition, the things that you saw and went through, or
So I was always a philosopher. Now,
okay,
I actually consider myself a philosopher.
okay,
And I was always into wanting to understand and seek truth and challenge authority. So I was a terrible student in high school, terrible student. Not because I had any learning challenges, or more because I didn't care, or I wanted to understand things for myself.
okay,
So I was always reading, always learning, always studying, but the stuff that I was interested in.
yep,
I was reading Aldous Huxley and William Blake, and I started doing drugs also. I was
yep.
smoking weed, and I was doing LSD, and I was doing a whole bunch of stuff, not so much to party, but more to go deeper into understanding.
That's what I was going to ask because we all have that phase, right? And I think some people have that recreational phase where it's like, hey, I went to a concert and had some mushrooms and it was fun and blah 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 blah. But then I think people really do deep work with it too. So
No, I was going more to the ocean, to the beach, like bonfires, and then seeing where our mind could take us. But I was really into exploring, learning, philosophy, understanding life, making sense of life. I read a quote that really put me on the path that I'm on by William Blake that said, "You must create your own system or be the slave of another man's."
hmm,
And so I really took that to heart. I was like, okay, like I'm a teenager and I'm already thinking, oh, I'm going to create my own system. I'm not going to abide by anybody else's system. I'm going to figure this out. And I became a rebel without a cause. It got me into a lot of trouble. I was doing drugs. I was rebelling against the school. I was getting bad grades. I was giving my mother a hard time,
got it.
like really hard time, and really challenging and pushing the edge until I turned 21, where I had an awakening. I had a moment, and I, for myself, discovered that it wasn't taking me anywhere. That it was meaningless what I was doing. That's not what I was. I, I was wasting my life away.
Was there a specific event that triggered that, Jose, or was it just one day you woke up and it just kind of came to you as a thought?
I think since I was already a big thinker and really reflecting and going introspecting, that when I would wake up after these parties or these moments, I felt empty.
Got it. Okay.
And I was like, yeah, when I'm high, it's all good. But when
Yep.
I'm not, it's all like meaningless.
Yeah. What's the purpose? What am I
What's the
doing?
purpose? So I was creating suffering.
Yep.
When I wasn't consuming or when I wasn't high, I was suffering. Like, what's all this for? I had gotten to a place in my mind where I felt I've done everything. I know everything. And little did I know that I had done nothing and I knew nothing. So there was cognitive dissonance there
Yep.
where I thought I knew everything, and in reality, I felt like I knew nothing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Total sense. Total
Yeah,
sense.
but it was more,
And
and
those inner awakening moments, right, where you actually have to face yourself, your truth, and
yeah,
say, you know what? Okay, I may think that I know everything. I may think that I have it figured out, or whatever. But yeah, those deep moments. One of the things I always tell people is I'm a big mirror work person, Jose. So I do a lot of mirror work. I at least once a day I'm in front of the mirror and I'll
yeah,
say things, and I tell people even like people are like, oh, I'm not a salesperson, but I'm working on an elevator pitch and things. And I'm like, listen, look yourself in the eyes in a mirror and say your pitch. And the
yeah,
day you believe yourself is the day you're ready to go out and market yourself to the market, right? And it's like, because if you don't believe it, if you don't believe it in yourself, if it's not your truth, you can try to fake it till you make it, right? But we all know that we all get found out at some point, right? So
yeah. And that's a great way of seeing it because I was faking it unless I had some substance that made me feel confident and all knowing and whatever. When I wasn't there, I was like miserable.
yep. And on the
So,
surface, you're super happy, right? People see you and Jose, he's the fun party guy. Things are great. His life must be great. He's surfing. He does this. He does that. But again, that's the above the iceberg, right? That's what people see up here. They didn't see anything down here.
so somebody did reach out to me, and I had a guide. I had somebody like snap his finger and say, like, you know nothing, wake up, grow up, like, and I knew I had a lot of potential. Like, I felt I had so much potential and that I was wasting it. And so I went into a recovery program. I got into a 12-step program. I went into AA. And my dad's brother was also in recovery. And I reached out to him to sponsor me and support me and guide me in that process. Coincidentally, he owned a leadership center. Outside the city in the mountains of Managua, he had this retreat center where they were teaching leadership using ropes courses, outdoor leadership, sort of like an outward bound type school.
Okay.
So not only did I go into AA and start the 12-step recovery, which I think is the best mastermind group ever, but I
I
also
like how
had,
you refer to it as a mastermind. I like that.
yeah, and it's free.
Yep.
So I also had this mentor on the professional front. Like I decided to go work with him in the leadership center, and he started mentoring me in self development, transformation, leadership, how to be a facilitator, how to be a coach, how to support others in their growth. Like, I started getting some very strong mentorship on that side also. So I was doing the recovery work, and I was also learning a trade. I was also learning a craft as a facilitator with my uncle slash mentor at his leadership center, and
That's
that's where
amazing.
everything came together.
And I believe that probably because you were at that state, you're at that state of, okay, you surrendered to the recovery, right? You surrendered to the program and things like that, that you were probably actually ready for those lessons at that point, right? Because then that was probably your wake up moment of like, because I think if you would have approached that leadership training at a different phase, you probably would have had a totally different result.
I had worked there when I was in consumption, when I was like 17, and
Okay.
nothing stuck. I was like, nothing stuck. I just remember, this is a funny story. I went out to party one night, got home like at 5 in the morning. And my uncle, the same one that helped me in recovery, at that time I was working with him, but I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't ready. It's exactly what I wasn't in the right moment in my life. I wasn't in recovery. The student wasn't ready for the master. I remember I had just laid down to bed. I had just closed my eyes when somebody in my house came up and said, "Your uncle's here. He's picking you up," because we had a workshop that day. And I get on the car, and he could probably smell it, right? He could probably smell the liquor in my breath. And he looks at me, and I had made him wait, because I wasn't ready. And well, he was waiting, and I stepped into the car, and he looked at me, and he said the two words The first lesson, one of my first lessons, sticks to me till this day. He just looks at me and said, choices, choices.
Wow.
And that's it. We drove off. And I was like, I would have preferred this guy lecture me.
I was going to say, right? Just berate me for 40 minutes.
Make me angry at him, make me resentful, make me hate him, and make him my enemy. But no, he made me my enemy.
Well, it's easy for us to deal with our own shit when we can make someone else. It's easy to give ourselves excuses, right? It's like, well, no, this guy's just picking on me. This guy, he thinks he knows everything. This, that, and the other thing, right? And like we become a victim, and we develop that victim mentality. And honestly, I think that's something that people do too quickly. We have this nature of like, hey, as soon as something goes wrong, as soon as something doesn't go the way it was planned, or someone's giving us feedback or giving us advice, I think some of our egos are just a little bit too big to be able to ever receive that and really understand that someone's looking at our growth and trying to help us, not just being critical, right? And
not judge us. He wasn't judging me. He wasn't judging me. He had a way of teaching that was just, it was an amazing way of teaching, but it was never like, it was revealing. He was a great master at that. He was a great master at helping you see things that you weren't seeing. And those two words, just that, choices, choices, stuck with me for the rest of my life. And though I didn't make the changes in that moment, it made sense. It made sense then, and it made sense later on. And I say it to my kids. I say it to my clients. Choices, choices.
Yep.
That's all it is.
You've adopted now, right? That's because it.
So many years later, I was ready, and I was in the recovery process, and the student was ready for the master, and I came up to him. I remember one day sitting in one of the sessions, watching him do his work as a facilitator, and just in that moment, it dawning on me, it's just, like, this is what I want to do. I was making changes in my life. I was transforming my life. I was living my life in a way that I felt like I felt incredible about it. I felt really good about it. And I wanted other people to be able to find that same joy in living life in an extraordinary way. And I was watching people come to the center from companies, from, the groups that would sign up to come. And, it was corporate groups, universities. We would work on team building and leadership skills. And I was doing ropes courses. I went to Outward Bound to train. I was living a life, and, I was in the mountains. I was teaching people. I was enjoying it. And I was 23, 24, 25. And we were receiving people, and they were bitter, and they weren't happy. And that's the problem I saw. That's what I couldn't tolerate. I couldn't tolerate people feeling like, I hate my job. I hate my work. I hate my boss. I hate what I'm doing. And I'm a victim of this. I can't do anything about it. I had no choice. That to me was the problem that I wanted to solve. That to me was like, how do I help this person? And I would push myself on them. I would try to convince them. I would tell them, no, you can do it. Like, I would try to push what I was learning for myself on them, and it wasn't working. I was just coming off as pushy or judging or preaching.
It's difficult. Well, it's difficult in those moments because it makes so much sense to you because you've done the work, you've done the process, you've observed, right? So like I've had the same thing where it's like, it makes so much sense to you. And you're like, why can they not just connect to this? Like, how can they not see this? Right? Like what are they missing? And it's frustrating sometimes and it's difficult because it's like, you're so in it. And I equate that to, anything, right? Like, people will get super excited about a team that, made the playoffs, right? And it's your city. Now, there's someone that has never watched a football game, has never done this, that, and the other thing. Next thing you know, they're crying at the Super Bowl because of but it's that community that brought them into it, right? And it's that energy that surrounds them and brings them to it. And then that's what they're feeding off of. So it's not their passion for football or for the Eagles or for whoever, right? It's that they're feeding off of that. And in that moment, they can accept that. They can be like, hey, this is what we're doing right now, right? And I think when it comes to self-development, I think one of the challenges is people don't always know that they're ready for that moment or that they even need that moment or where they are, or what it is that's missing, right?
Yeah. So I had I had a limitation in that moment. I had a desire to help, but I was limited. I didn't know how. I wasn't approaching it the right way. Through facilitation was one way, but what I discovered in one day we had a course on coaching, talking about 17 years ago. I get the first, like my uncle tells me, we're going to do a course on coaching. We're going to sell this course. And I'm like, what the hell is coaching? He's like, oh, it's this method where you help somebody accelerate their development, maximize their potential, live their life, their dream, help them develop. It's where you support somebody in their development. And I'm like, oh, shoot, that's what I need. That's who I am. That's what I want to be. Tell me more about this coaching thing. And he's like, well, it's also a profession. I'm like, wait a minute, you can get paid for this?
Wait, I can do this as my job?
Like, wait a minute, you can get paid. Yeah, you can get paid. You can get paid very good for this. I'm like, wait, so how do I do this? Wait, like, hold up here. Like, how do I do this? How do I become a coach? Can I coach tomorrow? And he's like, no, you have to train. So I come from a line of coaching that, I'm an accredited International Coaching Federation, ICF coach. I trained as a professional coach. I took a really long process of formally training. And I find a lot of value in that because I have this person with this limitation that I want to serve, that I want to help, and I have this training that's helped me serve them in the best way possible. So the answer to my question of how do I serve this person was, develop yourself as a coach, learn how to be of help, of service. So I asked my uncle, where do I start? And this is where, the universe is conspiring, my friend. So my uncle was like, I have a friend in North Carolina, in Asheville, who wrote a book called The Mindful Coach. And my uncle actually inspired him to write the book. So in the acknowledgments, my uncle is acknowledged by Doug Silsby. Yeah, Doug Silsby was my mentor. He passed away in 2018, but I trained with him for over 10 years. But my uncle tells me I have this friend in Asheville who has a book called The Mindful Coach. So I go and I read the book. Now, here's two things here. I'm learning about coaching, but I'm also introduced for the first time to mindfulness. Okay. So this book is actually on two things here, coaching methodology and mindfulness. So now it's like, what the hell is this mindfulness thing? I want to go learn with this guy. So I go to this in the beginning, which was really beautiful because Doug only had the book and a workshop on the Mindful Coach. It was a 3-day retreat. So I went to take this retreat. But Doug was also developing his own curriculum and his own coaching accreditation program. So I was getting to watch him do it in real time. So when I started, he only had the Mindful Coach, but then he wrote Presence-Based Coaching, which was his second book. And then he wrote Presence-Based Leadership, and he started developing this whole path of training that I was really committed to. I was his student. This was my teacher. This is the path that I'm going to take. So I was really focused on learning from Doug Silsby. That to me was a great master. And my uncle had introduced me to him. It was his friend that coincidentally was also about mindfulness and presence. So I am also a certified presence-based coach.
Got it.
That I learned from Doug. So I had the International Coaching Federation certification and the certification with Doug Silsby. But for me, it was more important to learn from Doug than the ICF path. Yeah. But Doug had his program accredited, which just gave me the accreditation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, right? Because I think, you knew that deep down what you were learning and the actual teachings and the actual diving into the mindfulness exercises and stuff is really, it's like anything else, right? We can go to college, we can get a degree, and someone comes in, they're like, I'm an expert in business development. I'm like, you don't know anything yet, right? It's like, you studied some books, you have some knowledge, right? But how you apply that knowledge. And I think that's where the accreditation thing versus and I think we're seeing more and more of that, right? Like, I know, when I grew up, it was like, listen, you have to go to college. If you don't go to college, like you are not going to be successful. You can't create a successful career. You can't this, you can't that. And now things are evolving past that, right? And I see that even in my with myself, with my middle child. My middle child is brilliant, Jose. Amazing mind, amazing thinker. Definitely has ADHD. Definitely struggles with some in school stuff and everything. But we found a path for him that we're like, he's doing remote learning now. He's absolutely excelling. He's got a 4.0 GPA doing the remote learning. He's my business partner, actual named LLC business partner in my Rush Bowl store, the acai bowl store that we're opening up. Kid has been invited to 3 community speaking events, right? So it's funny. We got in the car the other day. He spoke in front of 50 business professionals, right? Networking meeting. He's 15 years old, mind you.
Oh, wow.
So he gets up in front of a room. They're like, you got 10 minutes, right? And he is just doing his thing, spilling it out and everything like that. And I asked him, I said, well, Christian, I said, in high school, there's a course called public speaking, and you can take that course and you can learn a lot of skill sets and this, that, and the other thing. But guess what? You just got an A. Okay, because you went up there, you publicly spoke in front of a room full of business professionals, like tough crowd, and you killed it, right? So now you're just going to work on refining that skill and things. So it's interesting to see where it's like the minute we took him out of the box, Jose, he is just flourishing, right? And he is just like, just to see it. And his mother, same thing. My ex and I are divorced, but we remained very good friends, fortunately. Right. So we are like truly best of friends. And we both say it all the time. We're like, look at his growth. Like as soon as we untied that box and said, you know what, maybe this isn't his path. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a better path. So it's amazing to kind of hear that from you and kind of hear those. And I love to hear those stories because it gives that confidence and like, I'm not messing my kid up, right? Like I'm actually creating a system for him where it's like he can thrive. And he tells me, he looks me in the face. He's like, Dad, by the time I'm 20 years old, I'm going to own 2 of my own Rush Bowl stores. I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm like, amazing, right? Like, good for you. So
I was the worst student throughout all high school. I struggled. My mom would go lobby all the time to keep me in high school. I graduated last in my class. But I always tell people, I graduated last in my class, but I was probably happier than number 2 in the class. Because number 2 wasn't number 1, and she probably wanted to be number 1.
Yep.
I was just as happy as number 1, but I was the last one. I was just like, I made it, man. But I was joyous. I was like, I made it. This is amazing.
Yep.
But what happened, you asked me before about how did I get into political science.
Yep.
I gave it a shot to study agriculture. I went to Honduras, to a very difficult school, because my dad, I used to love going to the farm with my dad.
Okay.
We would go on the weekends to the farm, and I would love being out there with him. So in my mind, it made sense to study something that had to do with the farm.
Got it.
So when I told him, Dad, I want to study something that has to do with the farm, he's like, oh, you're going to go to Zamorano.
Yep.
Zamorano is like the best school in Latin America for agriculture.
Yep.
I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I was like, okay. I went, and I failed miserably. And I had to come back from Honduras to Nicaragua. And since I already failed at high school, like I was bad at high school, and I just failed out of Zamorano, my parents told me probably the greatest thing they could have told me, not in the best tone possible, but the greatest thing they could have told me. They were like, you know what? Just figure it out. Go do whatever the hell you want with your life. We're done. Now, it wasn't in the positive tone. It wasn't like, I just want you to be happy, figure out what you want, just go. It was more like, we don't know what to do with you anymore.
I'm exhausted. I've tried everything. I'm exhausted.
You go figure it out. I wish they would have said it in a more, positive tone, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. It's like, I'm free. I'm free from everybody's expectations. I'm going to go figure this out.
Yep.
So I went to the university. I didn't know what I was going to study. I thought I was going to get into tourism. They didn't open up the course on tourism, like the class, like the career, whatever you call it. And so I had to choose on the first day of school what I was going to study. So they gave me the menu of what do you call the careers.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. The career
you were
paths,
off
the curriculums.
the curriculum. So I started looking at them. I saw engineering, like, hey, I'm not doing engineering. Business, nope. So I kept on going through the curriculums and I was just looking what it was about. And then I got to political science. I had never thought about political science. I had never considered political science. It never crossed my mind. But when I started reading the curriculum, it was like philosophy, debate, communication. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Long story short, I decided to sign up. My mom and dad didn't have a say in it anymore. They didn't care what I did. I had freedom to do whatever I wanted. And I
Yep.
started getting the best grades I have ever gotten in my life.
Wow.
Like I was showing up to school, I was just showing up. That's all I was doing was showing up, and I was getting good grades because I was.
Do you feel it? Do you feel that part of that shift was at that moment you felt that you were doing it for you now at that point versus like, you're doing it because your parents told you have to do it or society tells you have to do it or
It was. I was good at it. I was talented at it.
got it.
I was talented at speaking. I was talented at thinking, at debating. I was talented at speaking in public. So in the way the university worked is you would work in groups. So I would get together with the group of girls of the class, the smartest ones. They would do a lot of the work, and then I would present
Yep.
because they didn't want to be in front of the class. They didn't want to do the public speaking part. So the day before we had to present, for the test, they would give me the information. They would teach me everything. They would tell me and I could wing half of it.
Yep. Yep.
So I was talented at it.
Yep.
And just, I remember showing up to my communication class one time and I was kind of clueless. I guess I was surfing that day or something. And they're like, oh, you got to give your final exam today. I'm like, what do you mean I got to give my final exam? They're like, yeah, you got to give a 5-minute talk. I'm like, what? But I had already done this philosophical talk with a friend of mine one night at a party. And I was like, I'm just going to do that.
Just gonna tap into that real quick.
And I was like, and I started telling everybody how everything is energy. I was like, everything is energy and it manifests through the world. And I started going and I got a 95 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it tapped into my
It was
talent.
nothing you prepared for. It was nothing that you, studied and rehearsed and did this and that. You just got up in front of the room and did it.
I just got up in front of the room and did it.
Yep.
So
and that's that natural ability. That's what I saw. That's what I saw in Christian Jose. Like, swear to God, man, I had a tear in my eye as I'm seeing this kid look at the room, make eye contact in the room. I'm like, how is he doing this? Like, how is he doing this? And it's like, and I even asked him after the fact. I said, and I'll give you one little moment with him too, because you'll appreciate this. So, end of last year. So his older brother is super academic, and when I say gifted, truly gifted. Right? Kid does not work at all. Okay, 4.7 GPA, 1480 on his SATs as a sophomore. Okay, like just ridiculous, off the charts. Whatever academic track he wants to do, he's going to do. And I always would joke growing up, we always knew this about the two boys. So growing up, I would always say, Matt's going to invent something, Christian's going to sell it, and Daddy's going to retire. Right? So it's like, but I kind of knew at a very young age, like who they were and everything. But there was this pivotal moment for me that I knew I had to make a change for him last year, which was, he got his report card and, we're avoiding failing. How do we avoid summer school? They're the same end of year rush with the teachers. Okay, get this missing assignment in and we won't fail him. All the same thing, right? So I remember just one day, he literally just broke down, man, just sobbing, like hysterically, right? And he kept repeating the same thing. And he's like, Dad, why did God give me a stupid brain? Why do I have a stupid brain? Why? And bro, like to this day, like that, eats at me, right? But when we were at this event, okay, there's a facility near us that's this incredible baseball stadium. Okay, so where I live in Florida, people travel from all over the United States to play here year round. So I'm talking 6-7 days a week. There's 1,000 people in that parking lot, right? Constantly. So when we first decided to open Rush Bowls, I said to Christian, I said, we need to make a connection with that stadium, right? Like if we make a connection with that stadium, that's more than 6 figures a year in sales, right? Easily, right? So we're at this meeting. Christian does his spiel. Then we're going around networking. I'm trying to find the person to shake hands with. Christian has a line of 12 people waiting to shake his hand, right?
Wow.
So next thing you know, Christian comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, Dad," he goes, "there's someone that wants to meet you." And I said, "Great." I said, "Well, who is it?" And he goes, "Well, you know that big baseball stadium?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "It's the owner." And I'm like, "Really?" Okay.
Wow.
So I walk over, shake the gentleman's hand. First thing he said is,
Your kid is unfazed by the fact that this guy.
face. He has no idea what's happening right now, right? He's just like, "Oh, this guy's nice, Dad," right? This nice old guy.
He's the owner of unfazed by the ego or anything.
Yeah, like me. I'm like, "Wait, what? Like, let me fix my hair." Yeah, him just totally unfazed. So anyway, so I go over, shake his hand and stuff, and he goes, literally, the guy looked at me and goes, Are you the one responsible for this?" Talking about Christian. And I said, "Yeah." I said, that's my son. And he goes, "That's an impressive young man, sir." And I was like, "Thank you so much," right? So anyway, we get into the car and we're leaving the place, and Christian is just on fire, flying high, everything, right? And I've always told him, I'm like, "Christian, your brain is not stupid. It's different, right? Like it's your intelligence is off the charts. It's just a different type of intelligence."
Yeah.
So we sat in the car. I'm like, "How do you feel?" I always ask my kids, like, connect to their feelings and things like that. "How are you feel right now? Tell me about your emotions. What are you feeling?" So then he's, smiles and, "I feel great." Da, da, da. So then I looked at him and I said, "So how'd that stupid brain serve you today?" And he just looked at me and he goes, "I get it."
Yeah.
Dude, and it was like that breakthrough moment where it was just like a light bulb went off and he's like, "I get it," right? And I'm like, "It's not a stupid brain, it's a different brain." So
you gotta find your place.
Yep.
You gotta find your place. If you find your place, all you gotta do is you.
Yep.
See, if the most effortless way to be is be who you are. It's like to do you is the most effortless thing to do. It comes with ease. If you can find your place, on my path, one day I was going to present to this huge group, what in my mind was very important, and I was overly anxious trying to impress them that I got to a point where I was like, "Bro, just let go, just do you. If it works, great, and if it doesn't work, great."
What's
And
the
that's
worst
it.
that can happen?
And I
Nobody
did,
signs up, right? Like,
and I did me, and it was the best response I had ever gotten from a group. So it just reaffirmed, just do you. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. But it is going to require the less effort to be you than to try to impress or be somebody you're not. So the more you can define who you are and just do that, the easier it's going to be. But here's another interesting story. I heard Willie Robertson, the Duck Dynasty.
yeah.
Robinson or Robertson?
Robertson, I think.
Okay, Willie Robertson speak on stage, and he was talking about when he first took over the Duck Dynasty, the Duck Commander, and he was running the company, and he came up to his dad. And he's like, "Dad, we got to fire this guy. He's not doing anything. He's on the couch. He's just living off everybody else's work. He's not, he's not pulling his weight, and we got to fire him." And the dad's like, "You're crazy. You're not firing my brother." It was Uncle Si,
Gotcha.
who was not doing anything.
Yep.
But when they started the show, it was Uncle Si that was the most celebrated of all of them. He was the one that was really making it happen for everybody.
Making the brand, right? Like really.
Yeah, making the brand. He's like, this guy was, he was the golden duck. He was the duck that was laying the golden eggs.
Yep.
And all you had to do was just put him in the right place for him to just be him, and things work out. So I believe we all have to find that. And I think I've been doing a good job of that for myself and trying to figure that out for my children also. I have the benefit of now seeing my daughter and my son, and just like the story of your son, it's like, okay, man, just find your place, and you will flourish.
It's amazing.
So in my story, I went from being a rebel without a cause, a philosopher, a thinker, and then I became a rebel with a cause. I'm still a rebel, my friend.
Always will be. Always will be.
I rebel against the hustle culture. I still rebel against, everything that you need to do to make it work and make it happen, and everything that everybody tells you that you have to do and it has to be this way. No, man, I'm still doing it my way. So I'm still a rebel, but now I'm a rebel with a cause. I have a purpose. I think we can, you said we would talk about the why.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I want to get into that, and I always leave that for the end, Jose. And I was really excited about yours because, like I said to you previously when we chatted for a minute, I love diving into people's whys. Like in my coaching, that's one of the first things that I really do with somebody. And what I always find is that a lot of people have the surface level whys, right? So it's like, well, because of my kids, and I want to provide the best life, and things like that. And to
Yeah.
me, those are surface level whys. I heard your why during the conversation. You revealed it somewhat earlier, but I want to dive into that with you because I want people to understand and learn from somebody with your knowledge, with your experience, and everything like that. That if you feel your why is surface level, or if like your why is only like for me, Jose, I've never been attached to money. Okay. Like, yes, I'll set, finance goals like, hey, I want the business to get to this goal and stuff, right? And I think it's a good metric. It's a metric, revenue numbers, things like that. It's a metric that we use in business. But I always tell people to take it further and attach that to an outcome, right? So it's like, if I want to buy my family a brand new RV and start to travel the country more and start to see things more and do this, what steps do I have to take? What design do I have to make to get myself there? And one of the tools is money, right? So I'm not against money. I just don't hyper focus on money. I've never hyper focused on money.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you.
But,
I'm
but
with
let's,
you.
let's jump into your why.
So here's a couple of things I'll say on this. One is, I don't believe our mission is to make money, but our mission should make us money.
Yes.
Our mission should give us sustain our lifestyle with abundance. Even if you're going to be a monk in a monastery, you need to, be able to support yourself. So
Yep.
your mission isn't to make money, but your mission should make you money. And money is an indicator that you're doing a good job. To me, it's an indicator that you're doing it right and you can do it better. But the way I approach this is the why is why I do what I do. Why do I do what I do? And the bottom line is that I do what I do because there is suffering. That's why I do what I do. Because people, the other reason is because life is so extraordinary and we only got one shot at it. It's a miracle and we don't want to waste it. So, why do I do what I do? Because there's suffering and because life is sacred and you only got one shot. So, for that reason, my purpose is to be a source of presence, strength, and transformation for others. Because there is suffering and life is sacred and you only got one shot, my purpose is to be that source of presence, strength, and transformation for others.
It's amazing.
That's my purpose. And that's the way I approach it. Yeah.
I
And
love
I
it.
do that through coaching. I do that through my workshops. I do that through my content. I do that through conversations. I do that through whatever vehicle or project I bring into the world, whether it's apparel, we're developing apparel. We're actually going to develop what we're calling the world's most empowering apparel.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to
Yeah,
have
tell me about
unbreakable. So it's up.
Tell me about that. What's the vision for that?
The vision is that it's got soul. It's got, it's going to make you feel stronger. You wear this, you feel like a warrior. You feel unbreakable. You feel like you have purpose and meaning. We want to transmit like a way of being through apparel and build a community around that.
Awesome.
So I believe that all of our projects, just like your podcast and your consulting and these, all of our projects need to have this purpose as the soul, as the center of it. So whether it's my coaching or if I'm writing a book or an apparel company, it all has to be a source of presence, strength, and transformation for others.
Gotcha. So it all aligns to that one specific.
It's got to all align to that specific purpose. Even if I make a coffee brand and I call it Unbreakable Coffee, you got to wake up in the morning, you're holding your coffee cup and you're feeling stronger,
Yep.
unbreakable, because the brand has that purpose, it has that soul to it.
Yeah, because you didn't create the coffee company to just create another flavor of coffee or whatever. You created the coffee company to connect somebody to that. So whatever it is, it always
Yeah.
comes back to that initial purpose.
It's the same coffee with a story, with soul behind it. It's got to have soul. And the soul is the purpose,
Yep.
to be a source of presence, strength, and transformation for others. So that's my why. And again, I do that through coaching. I coach business leaders. I transitioned from working with people in Latin America to working with US based business leaders. I
Excellent.
bring a completely different approach. I'm outside of the hustle culture, so I bring another perspective. I bring depth to my work. And the way I say is I help business leaders expand their capacity to manage their full catastrophe. And what's the full catastrophe? I love telling the story. There's a movie called Zorba the Greek where they ask Zorba, um, are you married? And he answers, am I not a man? And is man not stupid? Of course I'm married. I have a wife, I have kids, I have the business, I have the house, I have the full catastrophe. That's what he calls
The
full
full
catastrophe.
catastrophe. I love it.
Full catastrophe. So I help business leaders expand their capacity to manage their full catastrophe with greater strength, stability, and presence.
And I
And
love that, Jose, because I think, and I'm sure you experience with some of your clients, it's not always about, hey, I want to make more money, right?
no,
And sometimes people come into coaching and different things, and it's like, and I think sometimes people think that that's the only purpose for it, but it's like, listen, even if I could show you a way to make the same money that you're making today, but feel more fulfilled, more purpose driven, more everything, then are you richer? And like I said, for me, it's about happiness. It's about fulfillment. I'm a huge I'm a huge gratitude person. So physically write down my gratitude notes every single morning, and things like that. And I think that when people start to, and it was funny because when I first started doing it, it was, from an exercise from a book, right? Big think grow rich guy. So, I've always tried the different principles and things like that. And when you first do it, it almost feels weird. It almost feels like a little bit awkward and outside and stuff. But then once you get into the rhythm of it and you actually start connect, that was the big moment for me, right? So I was going through the motions, I call it, in the beginning. Okay, I'm supposed to write down 4 to 5 things that I'm grateful for, and I would write them down and stuff. And I would do the exercise and get it done, right? But I'm in part of the hustle culture, so I got my next meeting, and I'm going to run to the next thing. Well, once I learned that I have to actually stop and sit with that for a moment, so write those intentions down, write those statements of gratitude down, but then sit with them for a moment. Actually think about them, feel them, experience them. That's when this stuff really starts to work, right? That's when manifestation starts to work. And you talked about that. And the other thing, I'll give you a quick flash here. So this is my most valuable possession, right, that I have.
beautiful.
Thank you very much. So, story about that, real quick. I found that painting online, right? And I saw, and it was this artist, Francis Toogood, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh my God, like I've read all Jim Morrison's poetry, huge Doors person.
Yeah, huge fan.
Awesome.
The Lizard King.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. So anyway, so I find this painting, right? And I'm like, I have to have that painting. I'm not attached to anything material, but I had to have this painting, right? So I started going back and forth. Turns out I went to grade school with this artist. He was my friend. He has a
Wow.
whole different personality, so I didn't realize it was him, right? And then he said something about like St. Denis or something, right? Like the grade school that and I'm like, dude, I went to St. Denis. And then he's like, well, this is Frank. I'm like, Frank, are you kidding me? Right. So it's awesome because, as you know, the birthplace of Jim Morrison is Melbourne, Florida, and that's where I live. Right.
Wow.
So I tell Frank all the time. And it's just, when I found Melbourne, Florida, like it was by accident. I literally drew a map from Orlando and I was like, I want to be surfing. So how close can I get to the beach? Right. And like, this is the area that I found. And I actually went to the birthplace of Jim Morrison with the painting and I took a picture for the artist and I sent it to him and I'm like, your painting made it home. Your painting is back in Melbourne, Florida. And he was like blown away by it. So,
there's a lot of synchronicity in there.
Yep. Yep.
So synchronicity to me, I would love to just explain it for people listening. Synchronicity is those moments of coincidences, but for me, those moments of coincidences just are a message from the universe that you are in the right place where you're meant to be. Like
Yep.
that moment that you feel that synchronicity,
Yep.
it's the universe telling you is you're exactly where you need to be. Everything is good and you're going to be okay.
Yep.
And I have so many moments of that happen on my path when you're awake to it, when you're open to it, when you're actually seeking that path, when you're conscious of what you're doing and in self-development, which to me self-development, Sean, is our ability to develop our own curriculum.
Yep.
It's like school provides a curriculum, university provides a curriculum, society wants to provide you a curriculum, but self-development is taking responsibility and building your own curriculum, putting yourself through the courses, the practices, the books that are aligned with what you want to do, what you want to become, what your dream is, what you want to manifest. It's you figuring it out for yourself to make it happen.
Yep.
To me, that's self
I
development.
always joke with everybody. I say I started reading and studying when I finished school.
Yeah.
Like I always say that, right? Because it's like I went through the motions in school, but it wasn't my passion. But you give me a book like Atomic Habits, or you give me something like that, man, and I can't put it down. Like I am
Yeah.
just into it, and just
So
that's
yes,
amazing.
I was learning and develop, but parallel to school. I was like failing at school, but here
Yep.
I was learning. I was developing.
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, Jose, we are coming up on the end. Thank you so much. This was amazing insights. Pleasure to meet you. I'm definitely taking you up on your offer to come down to Nicaragua, and we're going to do some surfing. I'm
Well,
definitely coming.
I do have my dream is to host people here in Nicaragua,
Oh, wow.
retreat wise. So I just want to maybe take the opportunity to announce that in December I'm going to have my first retreat, small
Amazing.
group, 4 to 6 people. We're going to do leadership, breath work, mindfulness, body work, volcanoes, lakes, ocean, surfing, free diving. I've designed. So I was a surf and adventure tour guide for some time also.
Okay.
So I'm bringing that and my leadership and coaching and facilitation skills together and designing a very unique experience to host people here in Nicaragua, which has been a dream of mine for quite a while now. So
That's
I'll
amazing.
send you
Well,
an invitation and see if not on this first one, you have to come at
I'll
some point.
definitely be there, man. I will
All right.
definitely be. It'll be my pleasure. All right, sir. Thank you so much. Go make it so you surfing today? What's on the agenda for the rest of today?
No, today we're going to work out and just read. And I think I have another coaching call later this afternoon.
Got it. All
I'm
right,
surfed
man.
out for this weekend.
Yeah, I saw that, man. You were hitting some bombers this weekend, so I'm
Yeah, that was amazing.
that's amazing. All right,
Yeah.
brother. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.